Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our first webinar during Plant-Based Week. We'll shortly be going live to David Foad, who will introduce the couple of sessions we've got today, an interview and discussion and presentation with Carole Mitchell from Eating Better on their Serving Better report, followed by a short video of some great practice across the industry, and then we'll move on to a cookery demo with Lisa Marley from Proveg, which has some fantastic dishes in, so I hope you will enjoy it. Just like to thank our platinum sponsors for the week, Bird's Eye and their Green Cuisine, Premier Foods and Corn Professional. David will be taking you through shortly some of the things that are happening during the week and where you can go later on to get more resources. So I'm going to pass over live to David now. So over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and good afternoon. I'm David Foad, editor of Public Sector Catering magazine, and thank you for joining us for the first day of our Plant-Based Week 2022. Today we'll be taking a look at a new report from the Eating Better Alliance that identifies the key actions that perhaps you should be taking to help promote your plant-based menus and persuading your customers to try them. And we've got Carole Mitchell, Eating Better's Head of Communications, to take us through some of the key points of the report. And there'll be a chance afterwards for Carole to answer any questions you may have. After that, we'll be watching a cooking demo from Chef Lisa Marley of Proveg, the international organisation working to reduce consumption of animal products by 50% by the year 2040. She'll be running through a few of the recipes she's helped to develop that offer chefs across the public sector simple and comparatively inexpensive ways to increase the plant-based options that they provide. Worth mentioning now is the fact that we'll be back again tomorrow at the same time, 2 p.m, for a cooking demonstration from Bird's Eye Green Cuisine. Plus there'll be a chance to hear from the commercial manager, Gerard Purnell, and Annika Shah, the European Sales Director. On Wednesday, May the 11th, there'll be a panel discussion around the practicalities of putting more plant-based options on your menu, which will be led by Simon Billing from the Eating Better Alliance. And joining him will be Nicola Strawther from Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust, Andy Jones from the PSE 100 Group, and Charlie Hewson of Humane Society International. And on Thursday, the current LASA School Chef of the Year, Rob Chambers, will give us a school meals focused cookery demonstration in association with Corn Professional. Just a reminder now that if you want to get in touch during any of our webinars this week, you can ask a question using the Q&A function, and please include your name and your company if you can. And there's no need to wait until we start taking questions. You can post one at any time. But if you just want to comment, then get involved using the chat function, remembering to choose the option to all panelists and attendees. And now I'd like to introduce Carole Mitchell of Eating Better, who can tell us a bit about their new Serving Better report. Good afternoon, Carole.
Good afternoon, David. Thanks for that, and hello to everyone. A bit of background about Eating Better, if people aren't familiar with what we are and what we do. We're an alliance of 60 different charities, big NGOs, and this resource is really drawing on some of the actions of our roadmap. We have a Better by Half roadmap, which sets out 24 actions across 5 sectors that we feel need to be pulled or need to be actioned to create the right food environment for everyone to have access to healthy, nutritious and sustainable food. And as far as the public sector goes, those actions include putting more plants on menus, normalizing plant-based sustainable eating in the public sector, and developing a sourcing policy that delivers less and better meat and dairy. And by that, we mean higher welfare meat, ideally from grass-fed systems where animals are allowed to graze and display natural behaviors. So meat is very much not off the table, it's very much on the table, but UN report after UN report confirms what we all know, that to tackle the climate, nature and health crises, we need to be eating less meat and more plants. And a plant-based diet with a lot more veg and plant proteins also helps in the drive to net zero with lower emissions. So our aim with this guide was to produce a user-friendly resource on the use of language and menu positioning to promote plant-based dishes, recognizing that all the wonderful work that gets done in kitchens by chefs, creating exciting new dishes, can be lost if diners aren't motivated to choose plant-based meals. So this is really about supporting public sector caterers and demonstrating a can-do attitude to shifting menus. So we looked at all the latest research and evidence from our key alliance members. We've got a glossary at the back of the guide, which has got all that research. And we spoke to key industry leaders about their experiences on what works and, crucially, what doesn't work to inspire others in the sector on the journey to offering more sustainable menus. It also builds on our survey with PSC 100 last year, which showed that 80% of public sector caterers had committed to reducing meat across menus, and 83% had increased plant protein in dishes by up to 20%. And more than half of those surveyed last year had also engineered menus to make plant-based dishes more prominent, which is really what this guide is all about, a language and positioning. And as we say in the guide, better menus, hopefully, can lead to better menu choices. So examining the latest research and with feedback from the industry, we came up with 5 top tips, simple, low-cost measures that can nudge diners to the greener options. So if we just take a walk through the guide and look at the main points. So tip 1, it seems obvious, but more and better choice of plant-based dishes is really key to shifting the dial here. And our research shows that having a higher proportion of plant-based dishes on the menu improves take-up, while another recent study showed that meat eaters were significantly more likely to choose vegetarian meals when at least 75% of the menu is vegetarian. But we feel a more realistic goal would be aiming for 50% of the menu to be plant-based. That's what we're ultimately aiming for, while recognizing that this is a gradual process. So for example, in our first Serving Better guide last year, which we released last year, we set a target of 25% plant-based menus in the public sector by 2025. And we think 25% is an achievable target for local authorities and other public institutions to reduce their environmental and carbon footprints and promote healthier diets. So moving on to top tip 2, making plant dishes the core offer. So putting plant-based dishes in pole position on the menu is key. Again, research shows that terms such as vegan and vegetarian can actively discourage meat eaters from selecting plant-based or meat-free options. So the industry advice was against using these terms and putting plant-based or plant protein or sometimes plant forward in the descriptions and putting them in the pole position. And as Andy Jones, PSC 100 chair, is quoted as saying in the guide, say what it is, no fluff, and just be honest. And I think that's pretty much sound advice. Moving on to top tip 3, stimulate the senses with better food descriptions. So how a dish is described on the menu really counts. And again, our research has shown, particularly from the World Resources Institute, which is an Eating Better Alliance member, they're saying using terms like provenance or flavor can really help nudge diners. So in the guide, we talk about highlighting the flavor of a plant-based dish, as taste is the main decision-making factor when it comes to choosing between menu options. So using language that highlights freshness and locality, as well as mouth-watering descriptions such as tangy, zesty, and slow roasted, can all indicate the care and time that went into making those dishes and, add to the value. Moving on to tip 4, again, this seems quite obvious, avoiding negative language. So don't use negative language about contents and nutrition. So for example, meat-free, meatless, low-fat, low-calorie. Research shows using these terms is ineffective at actually encouraging plant-based meal selection. So these terms can create the impression that the meal may be missing an ingredient or lacking something, particularly protein, and therefore has a lower appeal. So instead, highlighting the variety of plant-based dishes and making that the exciting sort of option. And finally, tip 5, it's making the connection with traditional and familiar dishes. So consumers are far more likely to select a menu option if the dish or ingredients are familiar to them. And again, studies show that familiarity is more important to consumers when choosing from a menu than both health, nutrition, and price. So if we take the example from the University of Winchester's catering lead, Dave Morton, who's actually quoted in the guide, they have a plant-based mac and cheese. It's a very popular dish because who doesn't love a bowl of cheese and pasta? But the dish is actually 100% plant-based. It's made using roasted pumpkin puree and yeast flakes, which pack in the flavor. So it has all the color and flavor of the traditional mac and cheese, but it's popular as a dish, as a vegan option, because people know what they're getting. It's familiar comfort food. So we hope caterers will find this resource useful. It's a short and snappy summary of what's possible with some simple low-cost changes, while acknowledging that change does take time. And all of the industry leaders we spoke to said it's crucial to talk to customers and staff and secure buy-in across the board before making any gradual changes and embarking on the journey together. One example of a public sector caterer, which I've just mentioned, which has been on a journey of sustainable eating for the last decade now, is the University of Winchester. We went to Winchester to make a new film on how it's become a beacon for sustainable eating as a public sector caterer, adopting a less and better approach to meat and dairy and gradually including more plant-based meals across menus. It also has a dedicated plant-based cafe on campus. So just to wrap up my little part here, here's our film, Serving Better at Winchester University.
I'm here at the University of Winchester. They are a beacon of sustainable eating, a fantastic menu with lots of vegetables and less and better meat centred to their proposition. I've walked here from the station. I've passed the hospital. I've passed the care home. I've passed the prison. These are institutions that feed thousands of people every day. This is the opportunity for where the public sector can really lead and demonstrate eating better.
Making a tofu chow mein. Tofu chow mein.
Back in 2010, we created our life ethos, stands for local, independent, fair and ethical, and that was really the start of our journey. So over 11 years we've progressed quite a lot. We started off by introducing free-range chickens. We're a compassionate, well-farming, good egg and good chicken award holder. And over those last sort of 10 years we've created lots of different things. So we've moved on to free-range eggs and then on to organic eggs, and it's all higher welfare. So our minimum standard is farm assured. Free-range chicken, free-range pork, and I say until recently it was organic beef. So yeah, the provenance is really key to what we do.
There is a great need to move away from a meat-based diet to more of a plant-based and sustainably local diet in that sense. And actually, allotments, home growing systems, localised farming, that's a huge part of where I think agriculture will be going in the next few years, and where we need to be ultimately to bring down our carbon emissions.
We think it's about rebalancing the plate, about a different position for meat, about meat being something special, a garnish on the plate versus the centre of the plate, and filling that plate full of veg and plant-based proteins that are just great for your health, great for your gut, and great for the planet.
Although we're paying more for our free-range chicken and our free-range pork, by reducing the amount of meat content in a dish, so putting more meat, more vegetable protein, more vegetables, you're managing the meat protein down, therefore you're reducing the cost, which obviously has an ultimate benefit for the students and staff as well. So we've recently launched Friends of the Earth Carole. The idea is that you can get you buy 6 meals that are plant-based and vegetarian, and then you can have a 7th meal free. Now that meal can be a meat-based option, can be plant-based, but the idea is that we're encouraging students and staff to buy alternative food. So out of 7 meals, 6 will be plant-based, and that's going to be a good thing.
This is the pumpkin puree for the macaroni cheese, so instead of using macaroni cheese like bechamel, use the pumpkin puree. what we'll do with it is take the seeds from it as well, cook those off in the oven, and then blitz it down, and then we'll add those to it as well, just to keep it zero waste. The world of plant-based and everything is huge. Like, it's massive. Like, how much flavour you can pack into it.
Can I have mac and cheese, please? Thank you.
What's yours like? Yeah, it's good.
They've got a plant-based cafe, they've got a lot of things which support a plant-based narrative, whilst also recognising that there is a need for, across the spectrum, feeding of the students. And obviously a lot of people like pizza and all these different things. So there is definitely a balance to be struck, but I think they're hugely in the right direction to where we need to be going.
We think that every organisation should have a sustainable food strategy that puts less and better eating very central to that. And then there are lots of ways of delivering that. More vegetarian and vegan options throughout the week, less meat within the dishes, more focus around better meat and local sourcing.
I am becoming more aware of how our, meat consumption, dairy consumption affects the environment. Like, I naturally seem to gravitate towards like the veg options, especially like here in Winchester.
The most frustrating thing about vegans is they're completely right. I completely understand that to move forward, I think it's something we all have to think about. But most of us, a lot of us, myself included, don't really want to think about it, because I'll be quite happy just carrying on the way I am, buying meat when I fancy it and eating things that I think taste nice. But I guess we have to make a decision to whether we want to do the right thing or we just carry on doing the convenient, tasty, the easy way.
Well, that was very interesting indeed, Carole. Quite a bit of what you said earlier referenced research, and obviously this is all to do with some of the sort of the nudges that were being implied by the tips that you've provided in the report. So I'll be interested to know what sort of research has been done to sort of not necessarily guarantee, but to help put some sort of argument behind any of these tips that caterers might want to take on.
Well, that is a resource for caterers to use. We've got all the research and all the evidence in the report. This was a compilation report that the Eating Better team did, and our researcher Lachlan McKesser put together. So he did all the science, he did all the data crunching, and yes, there's a wealth of resources out there to indicate that green nudges can actually help. As I said in the earlier part of the presentation, all the good work that chefs are doing, all the plant-based training that's taking place, as we will see after our Q&A with Proveg, it's all getting the final part over the line is getting the customer or diner to choose that. So simple techniques to promote plant-based eating, put dishes higher up, make them feel familiar. All the tips that we've put in the are all backed up by science and can all help. It is green nudging, little steps to help people to think about eating differently, not every day, just small changes that collectively can make a big difference.
Yeah, they are quite simple, as you say. I wonder, to what extent are they applicable across all parts of what we would think of as the public sector?
Well, last year, our Serving Better guide was very much focused at schools, and we've seen some great progress in the schools that we've visited and the schools that we've spoken to. But I think it's a cherry picking opportunity, isn't it? I mean, people can take as much or as little from it as they want. I think, public institutions have menus. One of the commentators on the guide says, they put their plant-based dishes forefront on the hot plate. So it's not just about menu engineering, it's about the whole approach to plant-based eating and how you promote those dishes. So I think it's across the board, really, and we just hope that this will be inspiring to help people on that journey, realizing, as we said earlier, that it's gradual. The changes are very gradual. You can't build Rome in a day.
No, indeed. And also interesting, the point that you made about this not being anti-meat in any way. And in fact, that's sort of borne out in a way by some of the findings in the report, which suggests that actually using terms like vegan and vegetarian can be off-putting. Is that right?
Well, that's what this research seems to be suggesting, that if you want to try and convert people who are traditionally meat eaters to be more flexitarian and consider more plant-based eating, people don't like being categorized in a way, do they? So if it's seen as something a bit more fluid, where people aren't being labeled with, oh, you're a vegan, you're a vegetarian, you're a flexitarian, you're a pescatarian, whatever you might be, just using the term and using the vegetables and the content of the dishes as the selling point rather than labeling it seems to be a better way of that nudging process.
That's great. Carole, thank you very much for that. We're going to move on now with our next part of the webinar today. But very much appreciate you coming along today to share the findings from this very, very interesting report. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thanks.
Right. And now we've got a cooking demo from Lisa Marley of an organisation called Proveg. And she's worked closely on the plant-based recipe development for the school sector, a program called School Plates. But we asked her especially if she could look out for us today some of the recipes that might be quite usable across all parts of the public sector. So we caught up with her earlier, we recorded the demo, so let's see what she put together for us on the video now. Good morning. We're joined today by Lisa Marley. Hello, Lisa.
Hello.
Yeah, and you've got some three, I think, quite interesting looking recipes lined up to show us today. So it's really over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the recipes I'm showing you today are from our brochure, and they are all nutritionally balanced. And just for example, the first one I'm going to show you is the spaghetti with homemade plant-powered balls. And that actually then can turn into really delicious plant burgers, which I'll show you how to make as well. And but just before I demo it, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the key facts. So it's like low in carbon, and like for like with, say, meat-based spaghetti bolognese, the saturated fat is way lower. And as you know, we're being told to eat less saturated fat. Also, the protein, because a lot of people with plant-based diets do worry about protein. Am I going to get enough protein? Where do I get my protein from? Well, actually, like for like, it's practically the same as well. So put your mind at rest. So this is a really delicious recipe. Now, in the talking about the carbon footprint, I'm actually going to use fresh tomatoes on the vine, where in the recipe in our brochure, it is tin tomatoes. So it's up to you, either or, but you can kind of adapt them to how you see fit. So super simple to make and packed with really delicious ingredients, which I'll talk. Lentils as well. So store cupboard ingredients with a long shelf life. Then we've also got beetroot and black beans. I've got a lot of stuff out here, so I have to be careful. And then we've got some really delicious spices. We've got ground cumin, we've got ground coriander, we've got onion powder, garlic powder, and sweet smoked paprika. So let's get them, I'm going to blitz them up. So you might have a food processor. You can actually do this with a stick blender. Failing that, if you have no electrical devices, you can use a potato masher. The texture will be a bit more chunky, but then when you're molding it and rolling them, it'll be absolutely fine. So it doesn't exclude anyone. So no expensive equipment required. So we're going to pop that in. And what we do with our recipes, taste is obviously really important, but also health and lots of things that are really good for you. I'm just going to use my finger then, but I won't. And then I'm going to add in the black beans. And we have, I helped design the recipes, but these particular recipes are done by a wonderful chef called Richard Fox. and you can download the brochure for free. So just going to mix them together.
Lisa, a little question just occurs to me for many of the chefs that work in our sector, obviously dealing with quite large numbers. So how easy is it to scale up a recipe like this?
It's actually really easy. So in the booklet, which you can download, as I said, for free from our website, it's all done for you. And then you can double it, triple it, or scale it, halve it, quarter it, and then you can work out. And roughly, I think it's 33 pence per portion, around about that. So it's really economical as well. But good question. So I'm going to blitz this round. The only thing I forgot to tell you is we also add some flour, a little bit of plain flour, and also some fresh breadcrumbs as well. So again, everything's like a store-covered ingredient. So once that's been blitzed around, literally takes no time at all, you then you get a lovely paste, which you can roll into balls, or you can shape into burgers. At this stage, or I'd say actually shape first, you can freeze or leave in the fridge. So you can make in advance, which is super handy. And then once you've rolled them into, say, for the spaghetti, into little balls, you then bake them in the oven for around 12 to 15 minutes. And then you've got your little plant-powered balls. So let's talk a little bit about the sauce to go with it. So I'm just going to turn it up again. So as I said, you can use tinned tomatoes. I've decided to use fresh tomatoes today. And we've got tomatoes on the vine. We've got pepper, a bell pepper. We've also got, oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
No.
Oh, no, okay. I talk.
No, that's
jump in. You have to just say, shut up, Lisa. So then we've got, so you can even use tomato sauce, but I've got some tomato paste. And then for our herbs, we've got some gorgeous Italian dried herbs, Italian-style dried herbs. And then we've got the garlic powder and onion powder. And then again, you blitz that up in your food processor, your stick blender, or your potato masher, or you could even just reduce it down in your bowl, and then it will just break up, and you can, the texture will be a little bit different. But, you know, most people have some equipment they can use. And then as you can see, you get a really rich, delicious sauce. Haven't added any oil to this. Again, you can obviously adapt the recipe to your own flavors if you're making this at home, because we do make these recipes at home. Obviously, they've been designed specifically for primary school children, but you can easily make them and have a delicious, nutritious meal, cost effective. So I'm going to pop in my little meatballs, so they're obviously plant powered, and then get them in, and then I'm going to coat them.
I can't help noticing, Lisa, that
yes,
you'd have no problem meeting your requirement for 5 a day with just one meal like this.
Absolutely. And what you can even do with a sauce like this, if you want to make it creamy, you can add in some butter beans and blitz it up. We do that with our mac and cheese. We add some lovely butter beans or cannellini beans, and it just makes it really creamy and delicious. And you'd never know they were in there. So you can pack tons of vegetables in. And if you think, oh, how am I going to eat all these vegetables? It's too much. But it isn't. It's just cooking in a different, not even a different way, just a bit more thoughtful way. And you can easily get your 5 a day. And I think 5 a day is the actual minimum we should be aiming for. I think it's more like 7 to 10 ideally, which sounds like a lot. But as you said, just whack a few more ingredients in and you've got your lovely sauce. So that's simmering away. Now, where did I put my, actually I'm going to serve it in here. It saves on washing up.
Interesting, the point you made about the butter beans, for instance, in that I know in the care sector, sometimes the concern is being able to sort of fortify recipes because, people need as much nutrition as they can pack into a relatively small meal because people don't have big appetites.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's what we like to do, trying to give it as much pack as much taste and nutrition into the meal, because it's no point in having it being really nutritious but taste bad. No one's going to eat it. So you have to have a balance of it tasting really good, but also getting as much health and goodness and protein and vitamins and minerals into the diet as well. And that every day, you know, it's not just a once a week thing. Every day you want to be filling your body with this goodness. Okay, so I've got whole wheat spaghetti, which when it's cooked, you can't really tell the difference. It looks the same, but actually is so much better for you. And that's just another little swap that you can do, a really easy swap to make something a bit more nutritionally dense. So I'm just going to mix that in. And you can reduce it down, or you can have it a bit more thicker if you prefer. I'm not going to use all the spaghetti. I'm just going to plate up as in for one portion, just to give you an example. But as you can see, you don't have to be particularly skilled in the kitchen to do this. You can literally have never cooked before in your life and make this dish. Let me turn that down. Okay. There it goes.
This is a recipe that has been developed for the Proveg School Plates campaign, if I'm right, Lisa. How many recipes have you developed for this particular campaign?
We in our brochure, well, we're constantly doing recipe development, but in our brochure, we've got 35 different recipes. Okay. So I'm just going to showcase 3 of them, 4 actually, because I've got another little side dish that I could show you. And we've had really good feedback so far. So we find that changing even like really small nudges makes a massive difference. So changing the name of something, what we found is that kind of on menus, traditionally, the meat-based dishes are described really, really beautifully and unctuously, and then you'd get vegetarian sausage. So it's not very appetizing. So just by adding a few descriptive words and making it sound more delicious, it's going to be more appealing. I'm just going to move that out of the way. So there you have like your first dish with your mix, so your plant-powered spaghetti, Italian style sauce. And then let me just grab the burgers. So again, these can be made in advance, used in the fridge, placed in the fridge overnight. Now I've used some plant-based cheese here, and a lot of people love cheese. Obviously, I love cheese as well, but I only have plant-based cheese. And we like cheesy sauces, but unfortunately, plant-based cheese and cheese is quite high in fat. So the way we get around that to make things really cheesy, sorry, like my jokes, is something called nutritional yeast. And nutritional yeast is, this is just one brand. There's more than one brand. And it contains B12, which is the vitamin that we all need. And it has a really cheesy flavour. And it's super simple to use. You can use it in sauces to make it taste cheesy. You can put it on pizzas. And it's just a product that is really helpful in the plant-based cooking, but maybe you're not familiar with. Have you used nutritional yeast before? Is it something you've heard of?
I've heard of it. I've not used it myself. It may be that some of the chefs watching today will have used it, but I do know, having a couple of vegan people in the family, that looking for dairy-free cheese, sometimes it can be quite expensive. So the yeast you're talking about here isn't a particularly expensive product.
Well, compared to a small piece of plant-based or traditional cheese, it definitely goes a long way because it's quite concentrated, the flavour. And of course, you've got all the added benefits that it's actually really good for you as well. And you've got that lovely cheesy taste. And, it's not high in saturated fat. Talking of saturated fat, I have just done some plant-based vegan mayo because, why not? because it goes so well with burgers. But of course, you can use tomato sauce or whatever your favourite thing is. So I have used a plant-based cheese here, but as you can see, I've shaped it into a burger shape, and it's very good. Excuse me, I'm just going to plate these up. So again, I'm just using a whole wheat roll, burger bun, and I've got some lovely lettuce and tomato. And of course, I've added some sweet potato wedges as well, instead of, just mixing it up, giving it colour. The more colour you can get into the diet, the better. And then these are like really absolutely delicious burgers. And let me just, out of interest, just quickly mention. So you've got two different dishes made of the same thing, but you would never really know. So our planet-friendly cheeseburgers, they're 51p per portion, and they're very low carbon emissions as well, which is good. And here, what I would serve it with, maybe with your sweet potato fries, it was also a little gem boat. So you've got the lettuce that are used in the burgers, you can fill with, packed with vegetables. And I've just mixed in a little bit of the vegan mayo. And what you could do is add a little bit of maybe tomato ketchup or tomato puree to make it more like a seafood sauce. And they're just like little cups of goodness you can have along with your burger to balance everything out. And so, talking of balance,
we seem to have lost the picture for a moment, Lisa.
Oh, we've lost the picture. I do apologise.
Slight technical hitch.
Oh, I apologise. Won't be a moment.
Okay.
The cameraman's just having a little look.
There we are, back again.
We're back.
Yep.
So, as I was talking about balance, the yin and the yang, I have a huge sweet tooth. So one of my favourite recipes is the sticky chocolate brownie with banana and ice cream. So the brownies are made with we've got black beans, we've got flour, we've also got a little bit of flour, that is. And you were talking, I was mentioning earlier, sorry, I'm just grabbing something from the fridge. About allergens. So you could easily swap the flour with the gluten for almonds, ground almonds, or there's something called chickpea flour that would work as well. So there's just like little swaps you can do to make it really inclusive. And that's what I love about plant-based food as well. It is really inclusive. So, you don't have to single anyone out. I know we love a label in this country, vegetarian, vegan, flexitarian, pescatarian, but they're just like really good recipes that have got packed with flavour and nutrition. So what's not to love? So what I've done is I've creamed some plant-based butter and some sugar. And to that, I'm going to add some plant milk. I'm going to add again some beetroot. So beetroot's brilliant because it's sweet, so it works really well in desserts and cakes. But it also gives that lovely colour and makes it really unctuous and sticky. In that goes.
Lisa, I know you mentioned in the when you were doing the spaghetti earlier about the ingredients that have got a long shelf life because they're tinned. But I wondered too, do you, when you're talking to schools about these recipes, do you talk about sourcing sustainably, and also thinking particularly about sourcing perhaps locally where you can, and certainly seasonally? Are those issues that you deal with?
In an ideal world, obviously that would be fantastic. And yes, when we work out the carbon footprint, we do it through a third company, and they do it on kind of like an average. So because we're talking about tomatoes, some can be locally, some can be flown in. So it's very difficult to know. With individual schools, we haven't had that conversation as far as I know just yet. I've actually only been with the company a few months, so that potentially is something that's happened. As far as I know, that hasn't happened, but I think that's a good conversation to have about procurement and sustainability and locally. I mean, we work with one partner that actually grows 10 different types of tomatoes and courgettes. So in an ideal world, that's what we'd all be doing, but sometimes that isn't possible. But I think people are becoming more aware of it and asking the question like yourself. And so that's something, to definitely think about for the future, if not already. I'm actually going to put a bit of a cloth over here because I feel like as soon as I start, it's going to plume. So the black beans, you can see in the brownies here that I've made earlier. Oh, I'm just going to turn the thing on as well, the machine on, so it's going to make a bit of noise. They kind of emulate a traditional brownie that would have a walnut in it. So they give that texture that you are familiar with brownies, but then it's completely nut-free. And with the ice cream, we call it nice cream. That's actually made with purely banana, and you can whip it up in a food processor, or you can do it by hand, literally just with a fork and just make it smooth. And then you freeze it in a shallow tray, and you've got the most delicious, creamy, nice cream that has, that has all the benefits, the potassium, all the different goodness that a banana has without any of the dairy products. So it's, again, super inclusive with anyone that has, doesn't have dairy in the diet for whatever reason. And
is that just mashed banana, or is there anything added to it?
Literally just banana and then frozen, and it works really, really well. It tastes delicious. You have to try it. Take my word for it.
Yeah.
And you can see it looks like traditional ice cream, but actually isn't. So again, this takes no time at all to make this brownie, and it's really good. It tastes really good, especially if you're like me and you do like your chocolate. So you've got cocoa powder in there as well, and it's just absolutely delicious. And I'm going to just pour some into a brownie tray. Just move that out of the way. I already had flour. If you're wondering what that bit of flour is, I used it already. Okay, into the brownie dish. And you've got this lovely batter. And I think, maybe people would taste the difference, but really you're tasting chocolatey, sticky goodness. And I don't think anyone would even question. You certainly wouldn't go, oh, has this got beetroot in it? So, So again, nutritionally balanced, but also tastes really good.
In your experience, Lisa, is it a good idea to try and be stealthy about some of the things you're putting in, or do you believe you should be sort of upfront with people and just present it and talk about it in the most positive way you can?
Really good question. I think it depends who your audience is. I think if people ask, obviously, tell. I wouldn't, you tell the truth, absolutely. Yeah. And I would see it as a plus point. So the children, I think how you place it. So we advise something like say Save the Planet Day, where everything's plant-based, and you talk about the ingredients. And I think it's really important that, I'm just going to pop this in the oven. I think it's really important that they do know what's in their food and where it comes from. But hopefully you can still hear me. Hopefully, what I was saying is, I think it's important that they do know where it is and where it comes from. I think it's to be open and honest about it, really, because I think if you think about talking to children what's in a sausage, for example, traditional meat sausage, and how that's made, or how a traditional hamburger is made, or most people really maybe wouldn't even want to know the details, whereas this, everything on this menu you can talk about with ease. That's my personal opinion. Yeah. That might be, other people might have a completely different view about that.
That makes sense.
So that's the brownies. That would bake for around 25 minutes. and then it'd be nice and gooey in the middle, and then you can let it cool and put it straight in the freezer. I would probably divide it up first, and they taste really good. So they have a few. I'm just going to put this over here so you can see all the 3 dishes, 4 dishes actually. And there you have, really quick. I know I did a little bit of prep in advance, but it's super quick to make, really tasty, and really good for you as well. So I hope you try the recipes, and I hope you enjoy them. Love to hear any feedback. If you do, that'd be great. Yeah, so do you have any other questions you'd like?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think people would be interested to know how they can download the resources you were talking about. So if you could just tell us how you do that.
So we have a guide and a brochure. So and a recipe brochure. So this is the recipe brochure from School Plates. If you go on the Proveg UK website, you can download this and find out a little bit more about what we do. And as I said, it's completely free to download. And we're always open to communication if anyone has any questions. If we're here to kind of help. Really, we're a not-for-profit company, so our services are completely free. We do workshops, and we just usually ask for maybe a travel if it's up and down the country. But other than that, we're literally here to help. And our mission is to reduce meat and dairy by 50% by 2040. So and hopefully we're well on the way to do that. And we've, I don't know if you saw in the news, but we have had 5 million meal swaps, which is really good. So when you swap a meat-based dish to a plant-based dish.
Yeah, a very good milestone. Yeah, it might be helpful for people, Lisa, also just to sort of hear just a little bit about the School Plates campaign that you specifically are working on. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done there?
Yes, exactly. So we work with local councils and boroughs where we review the menu in schools, and we work on positioning, language, and and as I mentioned earlier, the language would be kind of, if you've got a vegetarian bolognese, then why not make it a homemade bolognese with Italian sauce, kind of making it more appealing. Positioning, we talk about most main meals are the meat-based meals. So we're kind of saying, why not swap that around? Don't call it a vegan or a vegetarian meal, have a symbol, or the V or PB or VE. So it's a little bit, because sometimes vegan has a negative connotation, or what we found is some children or some people, if they see it's vegan, they think, oh, well, I'm not vegan, so I'm not going to try that. Whereas actually you just want to take away any of those barriers and think, oh, I'll try that. That sounds good. That sounds like a nice meal. And then we also do workshops where we go to the schools and we work with the caterers, and pretty much like this really, but we do the cooking all together, and we do this either a day or half a day, and then we sit and eat it. Always a good thumbs up. And we're starting online workshops as well, because we can't, obviously visit everywhere all the time. So it's a nice resource that people can just join in and watch. And if anyone has any ideas about or questions about what they'd like to see in a workshop, we'd be really open to hearing that. And as I said, if you go on the Proveg UK website, you can download the brochure, subscribe to the newsletter, and we're on Instagram as well, Twitter, all the socials. And so we've had really, really good results, fantastic feedback. Obviously, there are a few barriers that some people are resistant to change, but we have proven methods to help schools overcome those potential barriers, whatever they may be.
Yeah, I did want to ask you about some of the sort of the questions you get from caterers when you're out doing the sort of the demo. What are the sort of the major concerns that they have that you have to try and deal with?
It's such a varied thing, because some mainly to do with who chooses the meal, because sometimes the parents choose the meals in advance, sometimes the children choose the meal. So the caterers are the biggest concern is that there's going to be waste, that the children won't pick the meal. But what we've found is with a few tweaks and nudges, we don't drastically change any menu. We don't go in and do a huge overhaul so people don't recognise the food. It's just subtle nudges, small changes, little swaps. Just for example, using the whole wheat spaghetti compared to white spaghetti. And so it's just really reassuring and encouraging and working alongside the schools to overcome any of those barriers. So yeah, that would be a typical concern, which is a valid concern, but we found that with a few tweaks, actually, you can overcome those. And and we found that we're actually waiting for some research about how the positioning affects, because we normally, as people, go for the top choice on the top line.
Yeah.
So that, and then we don't say a main meal, vegetarian meal, it'd be option 1, option 2.
Yeah.
So taking away any kind of preconditioned bias that we might have. So there's lots of things you can do, really simple things you can do that make a huge difference, and it's really cost effective as well. And we find that most of our partners save money.
Yeah, I mean, which obviously is a hugely important issue right now with food price inflation the way it is. I wanted to just touch one other subject, and you did mention allergies earlier. You've also mentioned several times about how the recipes are tweaks in a way. So if school caterers or any caterer in the public sector is faced with needed to deal with allergens and looking at your recipes, there are usually substitutions that you can make to eliminate those allergens.
Yeah, and again, they're really simple substitutions as well. And we do suggest them, but also please feel free to email us as well, and we can advise and help with that. But yeah, so instead of pasta, you can have rice, you can have quinoa, you can have a different flour, maybe chickpea flour, coconut flour. There's lots of different alternative flours that don't contain wheat and gluten. And the only other thing is soy, because you can have a lot of soy in plant-based cooking. But again, you can swap out that for a different product as well, and that works really, really well. So it's a lot less of a minefield than with a traditional dairy and meat diet, as in it's just a real few simple tweaks to make it completely inclusive, which is good. But I think it's really important that we do address everyone, and it's so everyone can enjoy good, healthy food, nutritious food that's delicious.
Lisa, that is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and showing us these recipes today. They all look good, and I'm sure that there's plenty more in the recipe book for that'll be of interest to readers. And I guess we'll just wrap things up now and say thank you very much. And
thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Right, well, that's about all from us today. My thanks to Carole earlier and to Lisa for their contributions today. A reminder that we'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. with a cookery demo from Bird's Eye Green Cuisine. And you can catch a topical discussion about some of the issues associated with cooking and promoting plant-based food on Wednesday at 11 o'clock in the morning, with a panel discussion chaired by Simon Billing of Eating Better. And on Thursday, we'll have a chance to see the current Lacer School Chef of the Year, Rob Chambers, cooking a plant-based meal in association with Quorn Professional. On the final webinar slides, you will see the programme for the week and the logos of the suppliers that are supporting Plant-Based Week 2022. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.